Welcome to our sermon for October 8th. As you can tell, I'm not in our sanctuary. Instead, I'm in one of our small corrals at home, and that is because October 4th was the feast of St. Francis, and in worship today, we're going to be outside also on the front yard of our church for a blessing of the animals. And behind me are two of my favorite animals in the whole world. The white horse is named Cruz. He started me in my ride-and-tie career. He is a ride-and-tie horse of distinction, and I love him. And then the brown horse is Coda, and he is my heart horse. I've never loved an animal as much as I love Coda. And so they're going to help me, hopefully today, as we talk about animals and blessing animals and what that says about what we think about all of creation and what we think about God. Let me share with you from the 104th Psalm a wonderful testimony to God the Creator and also to how God provides for us. Beginning with the 10th verse. God, you make springs gush forth in the valleys. They flow between the hills, giving drink to every wild animal. The wild donkeys quench their thirst. By the streams the birds of the air have their habitation. They sing among the branches. From your lofty abode you water the mountains. The earth is satisfied with the fruit of your work. You cause the grass to grow for the cattle and plants for people to use, to bring forth food from the earth and wine to gladden the human heart. The trees of the Lord are watered abundantly, the cedars of Lebanon that he planted. In them the birds build their nests. The stork has its home in the fir trees. The high mountains are for the wild goats. The rocks are a refuge for the conies. You've made the moon to mark the seasons. The sun knows its time for setting. You make the darkness, and it is night, when all the animals of the forest come creeping out. The young lions roar for their prey, seeking their food from God. When the sun rises, they withdraw and lie down in their dens. People go out to their work and to their labor until the evening. O Lord, how manifold are your works. In wisdom you have made them all. The earth is full of your creatures. Well, for hundreds of years, people have, even thousands of years, people have trained horses by the method that we call breaking them. Through various acts of violence and coercion, we break their will to ours. And that has been the standard way of training horses. But also for thousands of years, there have been some people, kind of outliers, and now their numbers are growing, which rather than breaking horses, they've learned to gentle horses. And instead of breaking their wills, the horse's wills, to the will of the trainer, through a series of techniques, helps the horse recognize that the trainer can be trusted, that the trainer is a friend, that the trainer has the horse's best interest at heart. And when that happens, the horse will do almost anything for the trainer. We also know that is true of dogs. Some people believe that the way you train a dog is you break its will. And we've all seen dogs whose will have been broken. Their tails will be tucked between their legs, that they may obey you, but it will be with their head down and cringing in fear. And yet if we train dogs to trust us and to know that they can trust us and that we have their best interests at heart and that we want to be their partners, there's almost nothing they won't do for us, and they'll meet us with unbridled love and affection and trust. Now, I'm not so sure about cats. If you've ever tried to break a cat's will, the cat probably found a way to break your will. They're a little different. But I want us to think about the fact that this is not simply a different ways of viewing the way that we might train an animal, but it really is a different way of viewing the world and a different way of viewing God. This is actually rooted in theology. Thomas Aquinas was a theologian in the Middle Ages, and he really had this understanding that he got right out of Genesis 1, that God gives us the animals and we are to subdue and dominate them. And so anything we need to do to animals to get them to do what we want them to do, that's perfectly fine. He would be on the breaking kind of side of the equation here. And Aquinas also had a little bit of that idea about God as well. If my will is not to God's will, God will break me and break my will and make me cower before him. And of course sometimes that may be true and sometimes that may even be necessary. But St. Francis, who lived before Aquinas, really saw things differently. And as again, he was kind of in the minority for a while, but hopefully that is beginning to gain. St. Francis saw in Genesis that God says, that we are created in God's image. And St. Francis asked, well, how does God treat us? And Psalms like the 104th Psalm are a great example of that, where God is the provider. You're providing water. You're providing grass. You're providing the trees for the homes for the birds, and the mountains for the homes for the mountain goats, and everything is part of your provision. And then we as humans, created in God's image, also are called to provide for animals. Yes, animals are our servants, just as we are servants of God, and yet they should be our willing servants. They should be our servants because they've come to trust us and come to know that we will provide for them and that we do have their best needs at heart. St. Francis, amazingly, you may know, saw animals as our brothers and our sisters, part of creation. We're a different part, maybe even a greater part, but still all part of God's creation, and so they are our brothers and sisters. The sun and the moon as well was brother and sister. And he recognized that God has given all of us a role to play, us and the animals. And rather than being in competition, one having to break the will of the other, we can play that role together as partners. Francis preached to the birds, and oftentimes statues like this one have birds there because he preached to them. He also listened to them because he recognized that the birds and the sun and the moon and all animals actually are singing praises to God, and we can learn from them. One of the great legends about St. Francis is that there once was a wolf that was attacking villagers in the town of Gubbio. The wolf began by attacking their livestock, and then it developed a taste for human flesh and began attacking and killing and eating human beings. Well, the villagers were gathering up, and they're going to go out and hunt the wolf and kill it when St. Francis happened to come to town. And he said, before you do that, give me an opportunity. And he walked out into the woods, unaccompanied, unarmed, and the villagers were pretty sure he was going to become the wolf's next meal. And sure enough, the wolf sees St. Francis and comes toward St. Francis with its jaws gaping wide, ready for this meal. But St. Francis makes the sign of the cross and tells the wolf to stop. And he tells the wolf that he wants to talk to it. And he tells the wolf that you can't keep eating the livestock of these villagers, and you can't keep eating these people, but instead, if you will agree to stop those things, I will get them to agree to feed you at the city gates every day, and there can be peace between you and the villagers. Well, the wolf lay down at St. Francis' feet at that moment in a symbol of submission to him and also an acceptance of this deal for peace. Now, that probably isn't a real story, but it's a wonderful example of Francis seeing humans and even animals that we might see as enemies becoming partners, if you will, even siblings. Rather than kill the wolf, he helped it see that the humans could be capable of trust, and he helped the humans see that even a bloodthirsty wolf could be capable of trust. And according to the legend, the wolf essentially became the mascot of the town of Gubbio, and indeed they fed it every single day at the city gates. St. Francis is also the inventor of the Christmas nativity scenes. If you have a nativity scene that you put out at Christmas time, that is because of St. Francis. And of course, his nativity scenes were full of animals. Now, he did live nativity scenes, and he always used live animals. And it's St. Francis that gives us that image of the cow or the ox on one side and the donkey on the other of the manger. And when he would do these nativity scenes on Christmas Eve or on Christmas Day, he would use the manger as the altar table, because indeed the body and the blood of Christ are there in that manger. And this was a wonderful example that Francis was trying to give to us of God ultimately providing for all of our needs, not just human needs, because human sin is what brings death into the world. Human sin is what brings competition between animals and humans into the world. Sin is what brings all these horrible things into our world, and it not only affects humans, but it also affects animals. And so there, presiding over communion, God gives to us Jesus, and not just us, but the ox and the donkey as well is giving Jesus, so that eventually God's kingdom to come will come, and we will live together in that wonderful, peaceable kingdom where the lion lies down with the lamb and where we are all in harmony together. It is on days like this that we celebrate. We get a foretaste of that coming kingdom. When we love an animal and the animal loves us back, we get a foretaste of that coming kingdom. And so, how do you treat the animals in your life? And what does that say about your view of God and the world? let us today celebrate and remember St. Francis and his theology of God's care for us and God's care for all of creation. Let us celebrate and thank God this day for the animals who are our partners and our siblings and who enrich our lives. Let us thank God for the great variety of creation, for all of the different kinds of animals, all of the different colors of animals and shapes and varieties. How impoverished our lives would be if we did not have that great variety. It's a gift from God, and let us give great thanks this day as we gather together in harmony with one another and with creation to praise God and to enjoy His great gifts. May God bless you. May God bless the animals in your life. And may God help us to get just a foretaste of His coming to kingdom, even as we wait and pray for Thy kingdom come, Thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Amen.